it's not for the weak of heart. I mean, it is challenging, and it's become more challenging, I think, in many respects, because of the technology and the media in which we function. It is you are going to get criticized not by a few people or a few hundred people or a few thousand people. You're going to get criticized by millions of people, and you can go very quickly from being unknown to being notorious in a few seconds. One click on a button, and you've either said something or done something, or somebody's seen you say or do something that which people completely disapprove. And I have to say, I spent most of my life in politics in Canada, elected politics, before the internet, or just the last little while when I was in my last stint in federal politics in Canada was obviously I had a Twitter account and all that stuff starting up again. But it was a new world. And now, of course, at the UN, it's part of how you have to communicate. I believe as a diplomat, you cannot refuse to engage on social media. I accepted your invitation to join this program because I think it's important that we be able to talk about these questions and about leadership. However, having said all of that, I think that really good political leadership is essential. Leadership is an essential thing. It isn't just enough to take a poll or to add up the votes and say we're going to do this because everybody wants to do this. And you could say, well, yeah, but everybody could be wrong, and everybody could be basing it on bad information and on misinformation. And now we have to say on disinformation because of the deliberate misuse and abuse of technology to spread lies and hatred and say things that are just not true. And that's a challenge we face in today's world very, very acutely. I think disinformation and the systematic spreading of lies and the use of propaganda is one of the critical issues of our time. So if you don't have people who are brave enough to say, I'm going to take this on and I'm going to try to live my life in a way that is about facts and arguments and the case for the public and what is the public good, then you're abandoning the field to others. And it was a famous British conservative 200 years ago, Edmund Burke said, I mean, all it takes for the triumph of evil is for good men, as he put it at that time, but good people to do nothing. And so if we all sit back and say, well, I'm not sure I can do that, or it's too disruptive for me. It's not my life. I want to stay. I want to do this job. I don't want to put my head above. That's too bad, because there are a lot of good people who don't go into politics because they say, oh, it's just so messy and difficult. But in reality, it's everything we do is messy. Running a company is messy. Running a business can be messy, and increasingly publicly difficult and challenging. So I don't think politics is uniquely messy. But what I do think is it requires a certain kind of skill set that actually people should not make the mistake of thinking, oh, that's easy, I could do that. And you sort of say, no, it's not. It's not that easy. Because I know a lot of people who've gone into politics later when they're 50s or 60s, saying, oh, I can do this. I've succeeded in a bunch of other things. There aren't that many people who really succeeded in business who actually end up doing well in politics because they don't necessarily understand all of the elements of how it works. There are many people who are very bright, intelligent academics or whatever, and they think they can do this because they sort of think they are aware of the arguments. But politics is about emotion. It's not only about intellect. It's about character. It's about ability to lead, to be consistent, to be strong, to be clear as best you can, and to have an ability to be nimble, to pivot. And there are many people who go into politics with an ideology in their head or with a number of very fixed views. And they come in thinking that their fixed views are going to win over everybody else. And it doesn't happen. I mean, I'm not going to mention any names, but I've seen it. I've seen it up close, and it doesn't work. And so you have to say there's something to be said for somebody who's decided to not to be a celebrity necessarily, not to be hugely wealthy, because you don't get wealthy in politics. You don't necessarily become a celebrity like somebody who chooses to sell a product on the internet or something. But you do know how government works, and you do have a way of saying, how can I persuade enough people that this is the direction we need to shift in? And there's some very gifted politicians who, in my view, retired too early, and could have kept on going because they really had a very necessary gift. And people said, oh well, he's past the age now, he should move on. And you look at him and say, I mean, there was a time, I think, in the 19th century when political leaders just carried on. I mean, in our country, in Canada, most of the prime minister, the early prime ministers, all died in office. They just stayed, and they just kept going because that's what they did. That was their vocation. It wasn't a career. It was them. It was who they were.